Everyone's like, what is going on with the refs? And I'm like, I don't know. And you finding me $500 is not going to do.
Sophie Cunningham has always been one of those players you can't ignore. Whether you love her toughness or hate her edge, one thing is undeniable. She refuses to be controlled. And now, after years of being labeled, fined, ejected, and even accused of being one of the league's dirtiest players, Sophie is staring down the WNBA itself. The league may think it can punish her into silence, but what they don't realize is that Cunningham thrives in chaos. And this time, she's not backing down.
Just the competitor that I am. I'm fierce, I'm sassy. I stick up for my teammates, stick up for myself. And so sometimes I think that's okay to be feisty and to be yourself.
From the moment Sophie Cunningham entered the WNBA in 2019 as a Phoenix Mercury draft pick, her reputation was set. Physical, fiery, confrontational. A player who didn't just compete, she enforced. She wasn't the flashiest scorer or the most decorated rookie, but what she brought was a grit that Phoenix fans loved and opponents hated. By her second season, Sophie was already involved in heated confrontations, taking hard fouls, dishing them out, and staring down some of the league's biggest names. This wasn't by accident. Sophie has a background in Taekwondo, a black belt that shaped her mentality. If you come at me, you better be ready to take a hit back. That attitude followed her to Indiana, where she's been just as fiery. But here's the twist. As much as people criticize Sophie for being reckless, she's become the only player willing to act as a bodyguard for stars like Caitlin Clark. And that's where this story explodes.
When they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long. All season long. It's not just this game, it's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens. You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete. And they're going to have their teammates' backs.
On June 28, 2025, Indiana hosted the Phoenix Mercury in a game that was supposed to be about Caitlin Clark versus Diana Taurasi, the new guard versus the old guard. Instead, the headlines were stolen by Sophie Cunningham. Midway through the second quarter, Clark took yet another brutal foul, one of dozens she's endured this season without much protection from officials. Sophie had seen enough. She stormed into the fray, getting in the face of the defender and escalating the moment into a full-on altercation. The referees went to review. The crowd held its breath, and then came the announcement: Sophie Cunningham ejected.
That's a flagrant foul. It's a hard foul.
Fans erupted. Some booed, some cheered, but nearly all of them raced to social media. One fan tweeted, "Sophie Cunningham tossed for protecting Caitlin Clark is exactly what's wrong with this league." Another wrote, "She's the only one willing to have Caitlin's back, and this is the thanks she gets?" That ejection didn't just end Sophie's night, it lit a firestorm. If you know anything about Sophie Cunningham, you know her family has never been shy about calling out the league. Back in 2023, when Sophie went down with a brutal knee injury after colliding with Bria Hartley, her mother Paula and her sister Lindsay ripped the WNBA publicly. Paula accused Hartley of being a career wrecker. Lindsay blasted officials for failing to protect players and demanded accountability. That moment turned into a rallying cry for fans who saw Sophie as more than just a scrappy forward. She became a symbol of the league's failure to protect its own. Now, 2 years later, the cycle has repeated. But this time, Sophie wasn't the one injured. She was the one taking the fall for someone else.
All right, enough is enough. You know, at some point, the line gets crossed too often where something needs to be done and things need to be corrected.
And for fans, that changed everything. Think about this. In the NBA, legends like Bill Laimbeer made a Hall of Fame career out of being the enforcer. The Bad Boys Pistons were praised for their physicality, for sending a message every time Michael Jordan drove to the rim. But in the WNBA, when Sophie Cunningham plays that same role, she gets fined, ejected, and painted as a villain.
During that, it was just part of the game. I think the refs had a lot to do with that. It was a build-up for a couple of years now of them just not protecting, the star player of the WNBA. And so at the end of the day, I'm going to protect my teammates. That's what I do. And I'm a team player, so it's all good.
This double standard has only fueled her defiance. Sophie doesn't deny being physical, she embraces it. She said before that she'll do whatever it takes to protect her teammates. And Caitlin Clark, the most scrutinized rookie in league history, has needed that protection more than anyone. Since her debut, Clark has been shoved, body checked, poked in the eye, and knocked to the floor, often with no whistle. Sophie has made it her mission to send a message. If you touch Caitlin, you're going through me. But when the league tossed Sophie for doing just that, fans saw it as proof the WNBA doesn't want players taking matters into their own hands.
And I truly think that this was a message that she was sending to the leagues, to the officiating, just like to everybody, because it is, if you are watching any of these games, you are seeing that there is a disparity in the way that it's being officiated, and the Indiana Fever are held to a standard that no other team is held to.
Here's the real problem for the WNBA. Every time they try to silence Sophie, she only gets louder. Her jersey sales spike after controversies. Her name trends online after every altercation. Clips of her confrontations rack up millions of views on TikTok and Twitter. The league may want her to play quiet, clean basketball, but fans, they're buying into the chaos. They're showing up to see the drama, which leaves one burning question. If the WNBA can't control Sophie Cunningham, do they even dare try? The WNBA thought ejecting Sophie Cunningham would calm the storm. Instead, it poured gasoline on the fire. Because here's the truth, Sophie isn't just another player anymore. She's become the face of a growing movement, one that says the league has double standards, inconsistent officiating, and zero tolerance for players who refuse to fit the mold. And the harder the WNBA tries to clamp down on her, the bigger she becomes. After her June 28th ejection, Sophie's name was everywhere. Talk shows debated her reckless style. Headlines labeled her the dirtiest player in the WNBA. Fans on both sides dug in. The league wanted to paint Sophie as the problem, but fans remembered the history. Just weeks earlier, Bria Hartley had collided with Sophie in a way that looked far from accidental.
Oh, and Cunningham is down. My goodness.
Sophie's knee buckled. She collapsed, and her family accused Hartley of intentionally targeting her. The league did nothing. 2 days after that, Hartley yanked Angel Reese to the ground by her ponytail. Again, no suspension. So when Sophie delivered her own hard foul in defense of Caitlin Clark, fans weren't buying the dirty label. To them, this wasn't about Sophie being reckless. This was about the league deciding who gets punished and who doesn't. Behind the scenes, reports suggested the league office was tired of Sophie's antics. Rumors swirled that referees were told to watch her closely, to whistle her for the slightest infraction. And it showed. Every game after the ejection, Sophie was called for quick technicals, sometimes for arguing, sometimes for gestures that other players routinely got away with. The message was clear. The WNBA wanted her under control. But that strategy had one massive flaw. Sophie Cunningham doesn't do control. Social media erupted into a full-scale war. Hashtags like Protect Caitlin Clark and hashtag Free Sophie trended side by side. Fans who once saw Sophie as a hothead now rallied behind her, framing her as the only one with enough courage to stand up to the league's bias. One fan wrote, "The refs let Caitlin get hacked all season. The one time someone fights back, they toss Sophie? Unbelievable." Another shot back, "Cunningham's a thug. She's gonna end someone's career. Good riddance." It wasn't just Twitter debates either. Talk radio, podcasts, and even mainstream outlets like ESPN debated Sophie's role. Was she saving the game or destroying it? And here's the irony. The more the WNBA punished her, the more popular Sophie became. Her jersey sales spiked. Clips of her altercations hit millions of views on TikTok. Young fans started showing up to games with signs reading "Sophie Strong" and "Bodyguard Energy." Even former NBA players weighed in, comparing her to the enforcers of the 80s and 90s, the Bill Lambiers, the Dennis Rodmans, the players who bent the rules but brought an undeniable edge to the game. The WNBA wanted Sophie silenced. Instead, it turned her into a cult hero. Here's where things get even more complicated. Caitlin Clark isn't just a star, she's the star. The rookie who instantly transformed the WNBA from a niche product into a national conversation. Overnight, she became the kind of player executives dream about, tripling TV ratings, packing arenas from Indiana to Los Angeles, and turning casual sports fans into WNBA viewers for the first time in their lives. Tickets for FIFA road games sold out in hours. Opposing teams quietly admitted that Clark was paying their bills because when she came to town, merchandise flew off the shelves and concession stands raked in record numbers. Her effect is impossible to ignore. Networks reshuffled schedules just to squeeze in more of her games. ESPN and ABC started putting her highlights in the same top slots reserved for LeBron James and Patrick Mahomes. Analysts who never bothered with the WNBA before are now debating her nightly performances. Caitlin Clark didn't just answer the league, she redefined its value.
And every time Sophie Cunningham stood up for her, it made Clark look even more like a target. When Clark got shoved to the floor, Sophie was there. When refs swallowed the whistle after yet another cheap shot, Sophie stepped in. She became the enforcer the league didn't want, but the one Clark desperately needed. To fans, Sophie wasn't reckless, she was loyal. She was the shield that the WNBA refused to provide. That's why punishing Sophie Cunningham quickly became a lose-lose situation for the league, because fans weren't just defending Sophie anymore, they were defending Clark. They saw every fine and suspension as a shot not just at Sophie, but at Caitlin by extension. If the league can't protect Clark, fans asked, why punish the only player willing to try? And that's where the nightmare begins for the WNBA. Because Caitlin Clark isn't just valuable, she's irreplaceable. She's the ticket seller, the headline maker, the ratings machine. If fans ever come to believe that the league isn't protecting its most valuable star, that it's allowing her to be bullied on the court while punishing the one teammate willing to stand up for her, that's not just bad optics. That's a problem money can't fix. Because once fans lose trust in the league's ability to protect its crown jewel, everything is at risk. The ratings, the ticket sales, the momentum. Sophie Cunningham might not be the face of the WNBA, but by tying herself to Caitlin Clark, she's become something just as powerful. The symbol of whether the league truly values its stars or just exploits them.
This is where Sophie's defiance cuts deepest. Legends like Michael Jordan and Larry Bird built their reputations on trash talk, hard fouls, and relentless intensity. They were praised for it, called fierce, iconic, unstoppable. But when Sophie Cunningham shows the same fire, she's branded as dirty, reckless, even dangerous. That double standard hasn't just fueled her anger, it's fueled her following. Because fans know one thing, love her or hate her, Sophie plays with a passion that can't be faked. And that's exactly what keeps people watching.
The truth is, the WNBA is stuck. If they keep fining and suspending Sophie, they only feed the narrative that the league punishes toughness, that it can't handle a player who refuses to smile, nod, and play nice. Fans already complained about inconsistent officiating and double standards, and every punishment Sophie takes only validates those criticisms. In the eyes of her supporters, every fine becomes proof that the league fears her. Every suspension becomes another badge of honor. But if they let her play freely, they open the door to more clashes, more altercations, and more viral moments that push the WNBA into controversy. The league risks headlines it doesn't want. Out of control, dangerous play, the WNBA's enforcer problem. Sponsors and networks don't like messy stories, and Sophie guarantees mess. Either way, Sophie wins, because the very things that were supposed to weaken her, technicals, ejections, criticism, are the same things that made her must-watch. Every whistle, every punishment, every angry column or TV segment only grows her legend. She thrives on being underestimated. She thrives on being targeted. The league wants control, but Sophie Cunningham is proving that sometimes the more you try to control a player, the less control you actually have. And that's the paradox haunting the WNBA right now. The harder they push back against Sophie, the more they turn her into the exact thing they fear most, a star too big, too defiant, and too popular to silence.
The WNBA thought it was disciplining Sophie Cunningham, but in reality, they were building her legacy, because Sophie has crossed a line that very few players ever reach. She's not just an athlete anymore, she's a symbol of resistance, of toughness, and of what happens when the league underestimates the power of personality. And now the WNBA faces a future where Sophie Cunningham may be too big, too beloved, and too defiant to ever be controlled again.
Every league needs a villain. The NBA had Bill Laimbeer. The NFL had Vontaze Burfict. In the WNBA, that role has been slapped on to Sophie Cunningham. But here's the twist. Sophie has leaned into it. Instead of apologizing, she doubles down. Instead of hiding, she goes louder. And the fans, they eat it up. The very moments that were supposed to bury her, technical fouls, suspensions, ejections, have turned into highlight reels.
Clips of Sophie Cunningham staring down opponents, arguing with refs, or protecting Caitlin Clark rack up millions of views across social media. To the league, she's a headache. To fans, she's must-watch television. And that's why the WNBA will never truly control her. Because control means silence, and Sophie Cunningham has never been silent. We need to understand the bigger picture here. The WNBA isn't the same league it was 5 years ago. Ratings are up, arenas are packed, and stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese have brought in millions of new fans. The spotlight has never been brighter. But with that spotlight comes something the league didn't prepare for: player empowerment. In the past, the league could find a player, suspend them, and the story would fade. Today, one fiery tweet, one viral clip, one family member calling out the league, and the internet explodes. Sophie Cunningham thrives in that environment. She's not just a player, she's a personality, a brand. Every time the league tries to muzzle her, fans amplify her voice louder than ever. The WNBA is fighting a battle it cannot win, because in this new era, players don't need the league as much as the league needs them.
This is where the stakes get even higher. Caitlin Clark isn't just a rookie. She's not just another first overall pick with promise. She is the lifeline of the WNBA. The numbers speak for themselves. Since her debut, she's sold out arenas coast to coast, even in cities where the WNBA once struggled to draw 5,000 fans. When Clark comes to town, ticket prices skyrocket, secondary markets explode, and road attendance jumps by nearly 50%. TV networks are practically fighting over her games, reshuffling primetime slots just to feature Indiana Fever matchups. And when her jersey hit the online store, it sold out in hours. Her impact isn't just measurable, it's transformative. Clark has elevated the Fever into must-watch TV, but she's also exposed one uncomfortable truth. If she's not on the floor, everything collapses. When Clark missed games earlier this season with minor injuries, TV ratings dipped sharply, attendance fell, and the buzz cooled off. That's how much gravity she has. She's not just a player, she's the heartbeat of the WNBA's growth. And Sophie Cunningham has tied her name directly to Clark's. By defending her, by stepping in when referees wouldn't blow the whistle, Sophie positioned herself as Clark's unofficial bodyguard. She's the only one willing to take the technicals, the suspensions, the public criticism, so that Caitlin doesn't have to. Sophie became the enforcer, the wall, the message. If you mess with Clark, you answer to me.
That bond, whether intentional or not, has given Sophie Cunningham unprecedented leverage. Because punishing Sophie doesn't just spark backlash anymore. It risks alienating the very fans who pack arenas, buy jerseys, and keep ratings at historic highs. It risks alienating Clark Nation, millions of new fans who tune in every night just to watch Caitlin. And here's the dangerous gamble for the WNBA. If Sophie Cunningham ever decides she's had enough, if she walks away from the league, if she bolts overseas to Europe for multi-million-dollar offers or joins one of the rumored billionaire-backed independent women's leagues, she won't walk alone. She'll take a massive wave of fans with her. Fans don't just see Sophie as another player anymore. They see her as part of Clark's protection detail, as someone keeping the league honest. And if she leaves, they'll say she was driven out. They'll blame the WNBA, not Sophie. That's a narrative the league simply cannot afford.
This is the great irony of the WNBA's crackdown. The league wanted Sophie Cunningham under control. They wanted her quiet, contained, punished into compliance. Instead, they gave her something far more valuable: leverage. Sophie is no longer just fighting for herself. She's become the face of a conversation that fans, players, and media have been having for years. Inconsistent officiating, double standards in player treatment, and the league's refusal to protect its own stars. She's not a background character anymore. She's a central figure in a much bigger story, one that resonates with fans who are tired of seeing their favorites take hits with no accountability. Her platform now stretches far beyond her stat line. Sophie could score 5 points or 15, but the moment she throws her hands in the air at a ref, steps into a confrontation, or posts something fiery on social media, it explodes. Fans repost it, talk shows debate it, podcasts dedicate full episodes to it. She dominates headlines in a way that players with double her numbers don't. And that's exactly why the WNBA can't touch her the way it used to.
Every fine, every ejection, every suspension only proves her point that the league is out to muzzle her. And every time they try, her following only grows stronger. What should be punishment becomes fuel. What should silence her only amplifies her.
At this point, Sophie Cunningham has something most players spend entire careers chasing but never find: power. The power to shape the narrative, the power to bend attention toward her, the power to make the WNBA answer to her instead of the other way around. And that's the nightmare scenario for any league, because once a player realizes they have that kind of influence, there's no putting them back in the box. Sophie has tapped into a kind of cultural relevance that can't be measured in box scores. She's bigger than her averages, bigger than her role. She's now the lightning rod, the chaos agent, the one who forces the WNBA into uncomfortable conversations every time she steps on the court. That's not a player you can fine into silence. That's not someone you can suspend into submission. That's someone who will only get louder, bolder, and more untouchable every time you try. And that's why Sophie Cunningham has something the league can't take away anymore: leverage. So where does this leave us? The WNBA sits at a crossroads. It can continue trying to rein in Sophie Cunningham, risking more backlash, more controversy, and more headlines it can't control. Or it can embrace her, lean into the chaos, sell the drama, the rivalries, the fire that Sophie brings. Because whether you see her as a hero or a villain, there's no denying this: Sophie Cunningham makes the WNBA more watchable. And in a league fighting for mainstream relevance, that matters.
Sophie Cunningham is many things: tough, polarizing, relentless. But controlled? Never. The WNBA can eject her, they can fine her, they can suspend her, but they cannot silence her. They cannot erase the passion, the edge, and the fire that has made her one of the most talked about names in women's basketball today. Because Sophie isn't defined by a box score. She isn't defined by averages or stat sheets. She's defined by moments: the stare-downs, the clashes, the times she refused to back down when everyone else stayed quiet. Those are the moments that fans remember. Those are the moments that go viral. And those are the moments the league can't control, no matter how hard it tries. And that's why Sophie Cunningham will never, ever be contained by the WNBA. She's outgrown the role of just a player. She's become something bigger, something rarer. She's become a force. And forces don't ask for permission. They don't wait for approval. They move forward, tearing through resistance no matter who tries to stop them. That's the truth the WNBA now has to live with. Sophie Cunningham isn't just part of the league anymore. She's shaping it. And as long as she's on the floor, one thing is guaranteed: the WNBA can punish her, criticize her, even try to push her out, but they will never, ever control her.
Now it's your turn. Do you think Sophie Cunningham is a hero for standing up when the league won't, or a villain who's hurting the WNBA's image? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and join the conversation. Because one thing's for sure, Sophie Cunningham's story isn't over yet.